Welcome to Life Stories. Today, we're sharing a powerful and emotional tale about a mother who thought she knew everything about her son's life, until a shocking discovery at his bridal shower turned everything upside down. When a mother overhears her son and his fiancée plotting to cut her out of their lives, she's forced to make a decision that will change everything. In this story, betrayal, manipulation, and a mother's love collide in ways you won't expect. Stay tuned for the full journey. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel to hear more life stories. Let's dive into today's story. It was supposed to be a happy day, a celebration of love, of a new chapter in my son's life. I had always dreamed of the moment Ethan would find someone special, someone he could build a life with. As a single mother, I had sacrificed so much to ensure he had every opportunity in the world. I worked 2 jobs, barely slept, just to give him the best life I could afford. We were close, my son and I. We had always been close. Or at least, I thought we were. The bridal shower was at a grand, expensive country club. I wasn't rich, but I'd saved every penny for years. And this moment, my son's wedding, was too important to me. I wanted to give him and Jessica a generous wedding gift, something that would help them start their new life together. Perhaps they could use it for a down payment on a house or something else meaningful. I didn't have much, but I wanted to show them I was proud of them, that I supported their future. So, I tucked a check into my purse, walked into that grand hall, and tried to forget about the quiet worries gnawing at me about how quickly my son was growing up. I smiled and greeted everyone, handing over the wedding card, just as I had seen so many others do. But then, as I walked back from the buffet, something strange caught my attention. The restrooms were nearby, and as I passed by, I heard voices, Ethan's voice. To be precise, I froze in my tracks, my heart starting to pound in my chest as I realized who he was speaking to. It was Jessica, his fiancée, my future daughter-in-law. She won't even see it coming. Ethan laughed, his voice filled with an unsettling confidence. My stomach churned as I pressed myself against the wall, my hands shaking, desperate not to be noticed. My son, my Ethan, the child I raised, the child I had poured my heart into, was talking about me, and I didn't like where this conversation was headed. Once we're married, Jessica continued, her voice laced with contempt, I'll make sure she's out of our lives for good. No more unannounced visits, no more calls. I don't want her anywhere near our kids. My knees almost buckled. What was happening? What had I done wrong? What had I missed? I thought I was a good mother. I thought I had done everything right. But this felt like a slap in the face. Like a betrayal I couldn't yet comprehend. Ethan, my own son, the boy I had loved fiercely and selflessly, was planning to cut me out of his life. And with Jessica at his side, it seemed like they were already counting on it. Don't worry, Ethan said, trying to reassure her. She still thinks I'm her little boy. She'll hand over the check. And once the money clears, we'll go no contact. It'll be almost too easy. They both laughed. It felt like a knife twisted in my chest. The world felt like it was spinning. But I didn't react. I didn't storm in, demanding answers. No, I took a deep breath, smiled the best I could, and walked back to my seat. My hands were clammy as I handed them the wedding card with the check inside. Same as everyone else, but inside, I was anything but calm. I knew what I had to do. I had a choice. I could cry, I could beg, I could confront them and fight for the relationship I thought I had with my son. But deep down, I knew none of that would change the reality I had just overheard. So, instead, I made a choice to play along. I would let them think they had won, but I would make sure they got what they deserved. The evening carried on, and I forced myself to keep up appearances. I smiled, talked to the other guests, laughed at jokes, and admired the bridal shower gifts. But my mind was elsewhere. I was in a state of quiet shock, trying to piece together what I had just heard. How could this be happening? How could my own son, the child I had raised, be planning to do this to me? But as the night drew to a close, I walked up to Ethan and Jessica. I beamed at them, the same as I had done for every other guest. I'm so proud of you both. I said softly. I know you'll do great things together. They took the card and the check without a second thought, not once suspecting what I had heard. They didn't know. They didn't know that I knew their plan. But I did. And now, it was time for me to turn the tables. I wasn't going to give them what they expected. They thought they would be able to take my money and walk away, leaving me behind. But I had my own plan. A plan that would leave them with nothing. And I would stand by, watching the consequences of their greed unfold. And little did they know, their troubles were just beginning. 2 weeks passed. 2 weeks of pretending that nothing had changed. Of holding up the facade of a mother proud of her son. Supporting his new life. His new wife. But everything felt different now. The world had shifted on its axis. And I was left standing on the edge, watching as my son and his fiancée, Jessica, unknowingly tightened the noose around their own necks. The moment they tried to cash the check, I knew it would all come crashing down. It didn't take long for them to realize the check wasn't real. I waited a full day before I got the phone call from Ethan. His voice was sharp, filled with the kind of anger I hadn't heard from him since he was a teenager. "Mom, the check bounced," he shouted, his voice vibrating with frustration. "What the hell did you do?" I remained calm, too calm, even for myself. "Oh, that's strange," I said sweetly. "Let me check with the bank. I'm sure it's just a mistake." I didn't let him get a word in before I hung up. Knowing full well that the fallout was just beginning, I wasn't going to let this ruin my peace. Instead, I let him stew for another day. Let him sit in the mess they had made for themselves, convinced that I wouldn't do anything about it. And then, finally, I called back. I talked to the bank, I said with an air of innocence. "It looks like there was an issue with the account. It's no longer active. I'm so sorry, Ethan, but don't worry, I'll try to sort it out after the wedding." I heard the silence on the other end of the phone. It was deafening. The realization had hit him like a ton of bricks. The wedding was just days away. And they had assumed they were sitting pretty with my $40 check. Already planning their grand wedding with vendors booked, deposits made, and expensive dresses chosen. They'd already spent the money in their minds. And now, it was gone. It didn't take long for Ethan and Jessica to show up at my door. Their faces pale and taut with the kind of stress that only comes when a carefully crafted illusion crumbles. Jessica looked like she had aged years in just a few days. And Ethan was barely holding it together, a mixture of embarrassment and desperation clouding his features. They stood there on my doorstep, looking for answers, but I wasn't ready to give them any. I crossed my arms as I looked at them, a quiet anger simmering beneath the surface. "We need to talk," Ethan said, his voice strained. "Oh, about what?" I replied, feigning innocence. His fiancée, Jessica, piped up, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "We just wanted to make sure everything was okay. We wouldn't want you to feel left out of the wedding." I let them ramble on for a few moments before I cut through their sweet words with a sharp question. "So, when exactly were you planning on cutting me out of your lives? Before or after the honeymoon?" Ethan went ashen, his face draining of color. Jessica froze, her practiced smile faltering for just a split second. They hadn't thought I had heard them. They didn't realize I knew their plans, knew their intentions. But now, the truth was out, and there was no going back. Ethan tried to brush it off, tried to act as if it wasn't a big deal. "Mom, it's not like that," he stammered, but I didn't care for his excuses. I'd heard everything I needed to hear. "Oh, it's exactly like that," I said calmly. "And you know what? I was actually going to give you real money. But now you'll get nothing from me." I watched as the reality of the situation sank in, the shock and panic washing over their faces. "And if you ever try to contact me again," I added coldly, "I'll make sure everyone knows exactly what you tried to do." I saw Ethan's shoulders slump, saw Jessica's eyes dart away, avoiding mine. They had nothing left. No more lies, no more pretending. The wedding was falling apart, and I wasn't going to help them fix it. I slammed the door in their faces, knowing full well what the consequences would be. The fallout wasn't just about the check. It wasn't even about the money. It was about the betrayal. The reality was, they weren't just planning to cut me out, they were using me. Manipulating me for their own gain. And now, they had to face the consequences of their greed. It had only been a few days since the disastrous encounter at my house. But I could already feel the shift. Ethan and Jessica were panicked, scrambling to salvage their wedding plans and their reputation. But I wasn't going to be the one to fix things. No, this mess was theirs to clean up. I wasn't about to let their greed slide. But what happened next, what I uncovered, was something I never saw coming. One morning, just as I was going through some paperwork, my phone buzzed. It was a number I didn't recognize. Hesitantly, I answered, unsure who it could be. A woman's voice, calm yet urgent, spoke on the other end. You don't know me, but I know your daughter-in-law. You need to hear what I have to say. My stomach dropped. Who was this? What was she talking about? But something in her tone told me that I needed to listen. So I agreed to meet her. Meet me at the diner on 8th Street. I have proof, she said before hanging up. I arrived at the diner with a mixture of curiosity and dread. The place was quiet, almost empty, save for one woman sitting alone in a corner booth. She looked up when I entered, her eyes scanning my face, clearly trying to confirm I was the right person. You must be her mother-in-law, she said, her voice tinged with a sense of recognition. I nodded, sitting across from her. And you are? My name is Danielle, she said, sighing as she stirred her coffee absent-mindedly. I used to be engaged to your son's wife. I froze. My heart skipped a beat. My son's wife, Jessica, had been with someone before? I didn't know what to say. Danielle's face was pale, her expression filled with the kind of sadness I could understand all too well. Engaged? I asked, trying to process the information. Yeah, she continued, her voice heavy with regret. We were together for 2 years. She was perfect, charming, beautiful, always saying the right things. I was in love with her. And I thought we were going to build a life together. She even convinced me to help her start a business. I trusted her with everything. A sinking feeling washed over me as I listened. I had suspected something about Jessica. But this was something else entirely. How much did you give her? I asked quietly, trying to control the tremor in my voice. Danielle paused for a moment, looking down at her hands before meeting my eyes. Around $80, she said, her voice almost a whisper. I thought she had a vision. I thought I was helping her create something real. But it was all lies. The business didn't exist. It was just an excuse for her to spend my money, take vacations, buy designer bags. And meanwhile, she was seeing other people behind my back. I sat back in my seat, my mind racing. This was all starting to make sense. The manipulation, the lies. I had seen the way Jessica was, how smooth she could be, how easily she could convince Ethan of anything. And now it seemed like the same tricks she had used on Danielle were being used on me. And soon, they would be used on my son as well. I only found out when I saw charges on our shared credit card for flights I didn't take. Hotels in places I'd never been. She was living a double life. When I confronted her, she gaslit me, said I was paranoid, that I didn't trust her enough. But I knew something was wrong. Danielle's voice cracked, and I could see the pain still lingering in her eyes. I felt a rush of empathy for her. The same betrayal she felt. I could already feel it creeping into my life. I had no idea what Ethan was really walking into. He wasn't just marrying someone who was greedy, he was marrying a professional scammer. You need to get him away from her, Danielle said urgently, leaning forward. She won't stop until she's taken everything. She did it to me. And she'll do it to him. I felt a cold shiver run down my spine. The woman sitting across from me wasn't just a victim, she was a warning. And as much as it hurt to admit it, I realized that my son was being pulled into a trap. A trap I didn't know how to protect him from. But I wasn't about to back down. I had to expose Jessica. No matter the cost. It wasn't just about money anymore, it was about saving my son. And I was going to make sure the truth came out. In the end, I thought the truth would set everything right. I believed that once Ethan saw Jessica for who she truly was, everything would fall into place. But nothing could prepare me for the bitter reality of watching my son choose her over me. The emotional toll of everything that happened, his betrayal, her manipulation, the damage to our relationship, was something I never anticipated. My heart ached for what we had lost. And though I felt a sense of victory in exposing Jessica for what she was, it didn't bring back the son I had raised with so much love and sacrifice. The wedding came and went. But it wasn't the fairy tale they had hoped for. They had to scramble to fix things, cutting corners, and settling for less, all because their greed and lies had caught up with them. The wedding was a far cry from the grand event they had envisioned. I didn't feel triumphant, I felt empty. I had won, but at what cost? Months later, Ethan reached out to apologize. He begged for a chance to talk. But it was too little. Too late. I couldn't undo the damage. I couldn't turn back time. The truth had come out. But it had destroyed something precious in the process. I had to accept that sometimes the truth isn't enough to heal the wounds we've inflicted on those we love. And as for Jessica, well, I knew it wasn't over. She wouldn't stop until she had everything. But I was done playing her game. If you want to hear more stories like this, make sure to subscribe to our channel and stay tuned for more life stories.